Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the best damn movie-related show on the planet Earth, the John Campea Show, coming to you from right here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an awesome honor and privilege, as it is every day, to have you, our international friends, gather around as we talk about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all sorts of good things. And you see that star up in the sky heading up to the north? Well, it's our very own spiritual Santa Claus. He's the one and the only Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, to bring joy to all the movie fans. Robert, how you doing today, sir?
John, I'm doing well. I mean, we had a lot of movies that I drop over the weekend that we should be grateful for. It was amazing, a great holiday season, I think.
Yeah, how was your Christmas, by the way?
It was good. I mean, obviously it was a rather intimate affair, but we made our regular Christmas Eve dinner, and the girls and we opened all the presents in the morning, and I actually got some good stuff that I needed. I think everybody was very happy. I gave Elizabeth her first premium action figure, John. I gave her Wesley the Dread Pirate Roberts from The Princess
Bride. I'd like that.
I'd like that. Sideshow, and she loved it. So she won't stop. As long as she doesn't play with my toys, I'm fine.
Hey, I should probably mention this. You know, this Christmas season, of course, we had two major films drop. We had Soul drop, and we had Wonder Woman 84 drop. Here's an interesting thing. I want to share this with you. So just before, on the 23rd, a couple days before Christmas, I put up this poll on Twitter. We're asked, which movie are you going to watch first on Christmas Day? Right?
Right.
And over 6,000 people voted on it, and Wonder Woman 84 won by a 2-1 margin. It was 65.4% over Soul, 34%, right? So that was that. Now, yesterday, I put up another poll asking, okay, now that you've seen them, which movie did you like better? 7,000 people voted. 78.5% said Soul. Wow. 78.5% said Soul. 21.5% ended up saying Wonder Woman 84. So listen, we're going to talk about Wonder Woman 84 here today in a couple of different ways. We're also going to talk about Walter Hamada. The sheriff over at DC is saying that they're going to start putting out in 2022 4 theatrical DC movies a year and 2 smaller budget HBO Max series a year. We're going to talk about that. Tom Holland, with the bumping of Chaos Walking again, is now going to have 4 films he's leading coming out 1 calendar year. Is that a little bit too much? Is that kind of maybe overexposing himself a little bit? We're going to talk about that and a whole bunch more. But listen, guys, a little bit of house cleaning before we get into things. If you're new around here, why don't you take a second and click on that subscribe button. Become a subscriber to the YouTube channel here. It'll keep you up to date on all the things that we've got going on here. Also, want to remind you guys that this past year, spent a lot of time working on my documentary, Movie Trailers, A Love Story. It is, of course, out now wherever you live in the world, worldwide. You can get it on vimeo.com/on-demand/movie trailers. Whatever country you live in, it is available there for you guys. It's our documentary about movie trailers. But if you happen to live in the US or the UK, the documentary is also available for you on Amazon. Just go to Amazon and search for Movie Trailers, A Love Story, and you should find it there. And a special thank you to all of you guys who supported the movie and saw the movie already and already watched it, and all of your feedback that's been coming in. Thank you guys very much for that. I really appreciate that. Okay, guys. With that down and out of the way, let's get into some topics here today. And how do we select our main topics here on the John Campea Show? Well, it's really rather simple. You see, you guys come up with them by going anytime 24/7 over to www.thejohncampeashow.com/contact. Once you get there, you're going to see a form. Fill it out with your topic or question. It's totally free. Hit submit, and then maybe, just maybe, you might see your topic featured as a main issue here on the John Campea Show. With that down, let's get into main topic number 1, shall we? And our first main topic today gets submitted to us by Tom Thorne, who writes, Chaos Walking just got its release date pushed yet again to March 5th, 2021. This means Tom Holland is going to have 4 movies come out in less than 1 year. Chaos Walking, Cherry, Uncharted, and Spider-Man 3. Does it seem like he is risking either locking himself in as a Hollywood great or getting a bad case of overexposure? Is he risking it all on this year? All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, listen, Chaos Walking has kind of been a New Mutants situation before New Mutants even came out. It is a movie that was supposed to come out a long time ago. It got bumped, it got bumped, it got bumped. It just got bumped again, as a matter of fact. This comes to us from the folks over at Variety who write the following. Lionsgate's young adult sci-fi adventure, Chaos Walking, will be released in theaters nationwide and in IMAX on March 5th, 2021, a pushback from the previous January 22nd date. The move comes as distributors begin to adjust the Q1 calendar in response to the ongoing pandemic, which they are hoping quells by spring, given the good news about the vaccines. All right, so here we have this movie, Chaos Walking, with Daisy Ridley, of course, from the Star Wars films, and Tom Holland. Rob, the original release date on this is now coming out in March of 2021. The original release date, not when this film was finished shooting, the original release date of this film was March of 2019. By the time this movie hits theaters, it will literally be 2 years from when it was originally supposed to come out and hit theaters. Probably a good 2.5 years since they had actually finished filming the damn thing. I mean, Tom Holland and Daisy Ridley are going to look completely different by the time they walk the carpet on this one. But it does create this really interesting scenario right now. And the scenario that it creates is that it means within the span of basically a calendar year, you've got 4 Tom Holland-led films. This isn't like some actors who appear as a second or a third or fourth level character and they've got a couple. This is going to be like 4 films with Tom Holland that he's going to be leading in a year, all coming out. Of course, to talk about Cherry, which is the one he's doing with the Russo brothers. He's got this, Chaos Walking. He's got Uncharted, which a lot of people are excited about. And he's got Spider-Man 3, which is obviously a lot of people are excited about. So the question is this too much? Now, the person who asked the question is asking, is Tom Holland taking a gamble here? The first thing we've got to realize is this. Tom Holland has no say in this. Like, this isn't Tom Holland's decision about when to release movies. This is completely outside of his control. It's just going to have to work. Now, is there a risk of it leading to overexposure of Tom Holland? Yes, there is a risk of that. But remember, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, he's very prolific. He puts out a lot of films, maybe not 4 a year on average, but he puts out a lot of films. It's fine. The key here, Rob, I think is going to be, are the films good? Because if the films are good and people enjoy Tom Holland in them, then it's going to be fine. It's not going to overexpose him at all. The problem becomes what if the movies are all bad? Because Rob, seriously, we look at what happened to Michael Fassbender, right? Michael Fassbender, everybody thinks he's one of the greatest out there right now, but then he put out a slew of films in a row that were all terrible, and now nobody talks about Michael Fassbender. It wasn't that he did X number of movies, it's that he had X number of movies that came out and were all terrible. And that kind of becomes the thing that can prick you in the finger a little bit. So overall, I don't think inherently there's any problem with Tom Holland doing 4 films in a calendar year. It's just going to be the traditional issue of, are the films good, or are people going to dislike them and therefore kind of maybe sour on them a bit? So anyway, there's just that. Rob, you hear this question. What do you think? Do you think we can get Tom Holland overexposure at this point?
No. I mean, here's the thing. It's not about the actor. It's about the film. And if these films are good, I think that Tom Holland, people will they thirst for things that they like. And they're not, I don't think anyone's going to be put off by Tom Holland unless his films are less than good. The thing about Chaos Walking, I mean, we can make jokes about how many times it's walked off its release date. And obviously they've had a hard time in post getting the movie into shape. But I think he's a very appealing performer. I think the projects that he's involved with actually seem pretty fascinating to me. Obviously, whether it's Uncharted, whether it's Spider-Man, whether it's Chaos Walking, which I want to see, because, Doug Liman's track record has been up and down, but for the most part, I've liked the movies that he's made. Even when, he made, after all, Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat, or All You Need Is Kill, whatever you want to call it. I think I have videos that have different titles for each one. But I think, in the case of Tom Holland, he's a very appealing performer. He's even off screen when he's on talk shows and things like that. He has a winsome, winning personality. And I think people like him. And like you said, you made the point, it's not his decision. And I think when movies are scheduled, the studios aren't necessarily, maybe they're mindful of what other studios are doing. But if they have a film that they think is worthy of scheduling when they're scheduling it, I hope that it's good. I want all movies to be great. And I just don't think Tom Holland, unless he does something really egregious, like if he wakes up in a hotel room covered in blood with a couple of dead people in it, with no memory of what happened or how he got there, well, maybe people will say, well, Tom Holland, there's something weird with that guy. But until that happens, I think he's on a streak.
Yeah, and here's the other thing when it comes to is it overexposure with an actor? Here's the thing, and I know it's not a complete identical apples to apples comparison, but I often go back to this. Charlie Cox played, Matt Murdock, and he was Daredevil. Did people get tired of seeing him 8 times a year in the same role? No. And did they then get tired of him seeing him 8 times again in the same role the following year? No. It's about whether or not you enjoy something. And if the stuff Tom Holland is in, and a little bit of this is outside of his control, but if the stuff Tom Holland is in is good, people are going to enjoy it and people won't get tired. It could be a really good year for him because, listen, I think Uncharted has a ton of potential. Spider-Man 3, listen, we saw what Watts did with Spider-Man 1 and 2. He did a great job with both of them, so I have high expectations for 3. Chaos Walking is probably going to be a disaster. But Cherry sounds great. So if he goes 3 for 4, I think it's going to be a very good year for Tom Holland. But, we'll have to wait and see. Question is, guys, what do you think about that? Do you think it's dangerous, Tom Holland having 4 films coming out in the same year? Or do you really not think it's that big of a deal? Jump on down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's move into main topic number 2. And our second main topic today gets submitted to us by Benson Edgar, who writes, "Hey, John and Rob. I hope you guys all had a wonderful Christmas holiday season." I did. Thank you, Benson. I appreciate you asking. So, I watched Wonder Woman 84 on Christmas Day with my family, and I liked it enough, I suppose, but it wasn't nearly as good as the first one, in my opinion. Without giving anything spoilery away, I was wondering if you guys could give us your thoughts on the movie. Did it live up to your expectations? Thank you. And Happy New Year in advance. All right. Thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And yeah, it was a couple of days ago. Wonder Woman 84 came out and hit theaters. Now, I did yesterday a 5-hour open spoiler discussion on the movie. You guys can go and see that open spoiler discussion there. But we'll give you some non-spoilery thoughts for those of you who have not seen the film yet. Overall, here's my thoughts on the movie. There's a lot of division out there right now on Wonder Woman 84. A lot of people saying they really liked it. A lot of people saying they really hated it. I am in neither camp, personally. I didn't hate the film. I didn't think it was complete and, abject garbage, like, say, Michael Fassbender's Assassin's Creed. I don't think it was complete and utter garbage. I thought there were some redeemable things in the movie. There were moments in the movie that I actually quite enjoyed. One particular movie, Rob, just a simple little scene of Kristen Wiig walking through a park and talking with a homeless guy. There are moments like that throughout the movie that I really did quite enjoy. The problem is those moments were few and they were fairly far between. And unfortunately, the issues I had with the film outweighed that. So I don't think it's a completely terrible movie. I don't think it's as bad, for example, as Birds of Prey and the Fabulous Emancipation of One Harley Quinn. But the best word I know how to use for it, Rob, is disappointed. I was disappointed. Because not just because it didn't live up to my expectations, which were admittedly fairly high. They were tempered a little bit because I didn't like the trailers, but I still had fairly high expectations. Not to mention I'm a huge fan of Patty Jenkins as a director. But, every director has a bad day at the office, even Spielberg. And this was Patty Jenkins' bad day at the office. There was a lot of continuity problems I had. There was a lot of just common sense logic problems I had. There was just a lot of things about, not introducing concepts that became important to the movie. It was overly long. This movie did not need to be 2.5 hours long. There just wasn't a need for this movie to be 2.5 hours long. So at the end of the day, I watched it twice, and I just walk away saying I was disappointed in the film. I didn't particularly enjoy it. I don't think it was complete trash, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. Rob, in a non-spoilery way, you had a chance to watch Wonder Woman 84. What were your thoughts on it?
I wished it was better, but I look, here's what I didn't understand. The first Wonder Woman film was about Diana going into man's world for the first time and discovering that Europe was locked in the war to end all wars, the trench warfare of World War I. And the fact that she found courage in man's world and camaraderie with Steve Trevor and his merry band of brigands and joined them and participated in this conflict really had resonance for me. And I really enjoyed how they tied in real world history in a superhero fantasy context. This movie went the other direction. It took a fantasy context and went more fantastical. It was completely removed from anything to do with the real world. And yet they set it in a very specific time period. So when I knew that was coming, like having lived through that myself, I'm like, wow, there's a lot going on there. Height of the Cold War, Reagan's presidency, AIDS was beginning to rage across the world. There was the music, the pop culture that was coming out, the Olympics. I mean, there was all kinds of craziness that I thought, okay, how are they going to tie in the real world the way they did in Wonder Woman 1 into 1984? All of that was dispensed with for this weird, fantastical plot of a wishing stone that was created by a malevolent god that, by the way, we never see. When you find out that Ares was
Don't go too much into spoilers. Spoilers.
Right. Okay. But there was nothing. There was an insinuation that there was another god involved, the same way that Ares was involved. But they never went down that road. They didn't. They could have mirrored what happened in the idea that the gods of Olympus are somehow meddling in the affairs of humanity, as we saw in Wonder Woman. The first Wonder Woman is a really interesting idea because Diana is a child of Zeus. Obviously, the Amazonians are divine at least divine as far as the gods of Olympus go. And I thought they would have continued on that track because they had a pretty fantastical plot line that I just didn't buy into. I thought it was inappropriate for the Wonder Woman they established in the first film and had been established all the way back into Batman v Superman. So I think overall, I love Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. She's grown into the role. I thought the performers were good. My problem with this movie was this really weird, fantastical, nonsensical plot that was more at home in a children's book than what they had established in the first movie. And I felt tremendous disappointment in that. I expected more of this franchise. And instead of going in a direction that I'd hoped it would have gone into, it went in another way entirely that I thought was more along the lines of the Wonder Woman television series of the 70s. And I was perplexed by that.
Yeah. And one of the other things that, like I said, I did a 5-hour spoiler discussion, kind of laundry listing all the things that I had issues with. But I mean, one of the big things to me too, after watching it a second time was really, listen, I'm not as into Wonder Woman as I am, say, into Batman, right? Sure. So Joker is like, but can you imagine a Batman movie where you have Joker and he's your secondary villain? Like, that's basically, look, there are definitely huge, antagonists in Wonder Woman's pantheon of villains, right? But Cheetah is right up there. You could make an argument Cheetah is pretty much Wonder Woman's Joker. And for her to be the secondary villain, I'm like, really? And listen, and I like Kristen Wiig in it. I was nervous about Kristen Wiig's casting because I didn't know she'd be a good fit. Turns out I thought she fit into the role quite well. But I don't know how you do that. And like I said, to me, I don't want to go into all the things that I did appreciate because I don't want to give any spoilers away in this thing, but there were a number of things that I thought were done pretty well and some nice moments I found myself grinning and enjoying, but I think the kindest word I can give is disappointed.
Yeah, here's what I don't understand. Like in the end of these movies, like they took a page from Marvel's movies, they give a lot of comic creators credit in the end titles for participating in the how the character developed. And with Jeff Johns, one of DC's cornerstone comic book writers of the last, say, 20 years, he was one of the writers on this. And unlike what Marvel does, they go and they take inspiration from actual comic runs like the Winter Soldier was Ed Brubaker's run on Captain America. Well, George Perez did a pretty definitive run on Wonder Woman in the 80s, post Crisis on Infinite Earths, and he leaned heavily into the Greek mythology, and Ares and Cheetah were big villains in his comic run. And I was really excited thinking, okay, they're going to go in that direction. They really didn't. And I was surprised by that, especially with Jeff Johns' love and knowledge of the DC pantheon. I found the plot line just perplexing to me.
Yeah. So end of the day, and again, we acknowledge here there's a lot of people out there who really like the movie, and that's awesome. Rob and I want to love every movie that we watch, and we want to love everybody to love all the movies they watch. And if you guys had a real positive experience with it, awesome. I'm a little bit jealous. I wish I had the same positive experience. Unfortunately, I did. But the question is, guys, did you have a chance to watch Wonder Woman 84? If so, what did you think? Jump down to the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys, with that down, let's move on to main topic number 3. And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Samuel Pole. And Samuel Pole writes, Warner Brothers is apparently pleased enough with Wonder Woman 84's performance that they are fast-tracking production on Wonder Woman 3, according to Deadline. Given that Patty Jenkins has an undated Amazonian prequel to produce and a Star Wars movie to direct for 2023, how much does this realistically impact when we'll see the next Wonder Woman movie, since I doubt it could be here much sooner than 2024. All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, Samuel. And yeah, for you guys who may not have heard about this, Warner Brothers has greenlit Wonder Woman 3, and they are quote-unquote fast-tracking it, although that might be a little bit of a kind line. Here's what we get from the folks over at Deadline. They write the following. They write, Diana Prince is officially heading back to the big screen for a third Wonder Woman movie. Warner Brothers has fast-tracked development on another installment of the DC Comics franchise, with Gal Gadot returning to star as the title heroine and Patty Jenkins back to write and direct the concluding entry in the superhero trilogy. Warner Brothers said the third Wonder Woman movie will have a traditional theatrical release, and we'll talk about that in just a minute here. Traditional theatrical release. This first thing's got to be pointed out is this. Don't think for 1 second that this move just happened, that Warner Brothers just greenlit the Wonder Woman 3. This was greenlit weeks, if not months ago.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, Rob, I completely believe, I mean, I have no insider information here on this, but I'll just completely what I believe. When Warner Brothers went to Patty Jenkins and said, we would like to put this out now on HBO Max, I guarantee a part of that discussion was, we guarantee the green light on Wonder Woman 3. I guarantee you that was part of that discussion. On top of we're going to give you your $10 million in bonus money and everything else that came along with it, I guarantee you part of that discussion was Wonder Woman 3 and saying, don't worry about it, it's covered, we're going to green light it, go. But we want to put Wonder Woman 84 on HBO Max, which is fine. But yes, this was not something that just happened. This has been in the works for a long time. What do I think about that? Well, I'm very positive about it. I feel very positive about it, because here's why. As disappointed as I am in Wonder Woman 84, the one thing I would say, though, is that, again, I have all the faith in the world in Patty Jenkins. I love, Rob, I think you and I both really appreciate what Patty Jenkins did in the first Wonder Woman movie.
I'm a huge fan of hers.
Yeah,
I mean,
and what she did with Monster.
Monster is an incredible movie, too.
It won Academy Awards.
Yeah.
I mean, she directed Charlize Theron to the only Academy Award that she has. I mean, she's incredible. But again, I believe every director has a bad day at the office. And to me, and I know some people really loved Wonder Woman 84, all due respect. Personally, I was quite disappointed in it. Not awful, but just pretty disappointed. I think Patty Jenkins is going to learn from this experience. I think she's going to recognize, okay, what did I do that worked so well in Wonder Woman 1? What did I do that clearly didn't work with a lot of people in Wonder Woman 2? And I believe Wonder Woman 3 is probably going to be the best Wonder Woman movie yet. I don't know that, and I might be eating those words when it comes out. I thought Wonder Woman 84 was going to be awesome. But hey, there you go. But I honestly do think this is a no-brainer. Wonder Woman is a part of the trinity of DC. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. The first Wonder Woman movie, we all forget because we only remember what happened yesterday. The first Wonder Woman movie, Rob, everybody forgets now. The DCEU, the day before the first Wonder Woman movie came out, was a mess. Every movie they put out, even though I happen to like all the movies that had come out, but all the movies that had come out, half the critics hated it, half the audiences hated it. They weren't living up to their box office potential. And everybody was talking about they should reboot this damn thing, all this kind of stuff. And then Wonder Woman came out. And Wonder Woman became the first DCEU film where all the critics liked it, all the audience liked it. It was a huge financial hit. It was a big, big smash success for them. Huge. And due in no small part to Patty Jenkins and others who creatively worked on that film as well. So it therefore becomes a no-brainer that this is going to get a part 3. And even after my disappointment with 84, listen, Rob, Michael Jordan, I told this story on my thing the other day, but Michael Jordan tells a story about, I remember watching this interview with him and he said, Michael Jordan saying, you do realize that I missed more game-winning shots than I hit. And I remember when Michael Jordan saying that, and it's like, it puts it in perspective. Look, not everything that every great actor or filmmaker or writer ever does is always going to be like absolute top shelf. And I'm hoping this was Patty. Yeah, what? I'm hoping this was Patty Jenkins' stumble. I'm hoping she's going to recover. And I have high hopes for Wonder Woman 3, even though I was disappointed with 84. Anyway, Rob, you hear this news about Warner Brothers greenlighting it. What do you think about that in general? And also on top of that, she's got a Star Wars movie coming out in 2023. As you know, as a director yourself, directors don't just work on a movie for 2 months like actors do. They spend years on it. When are we, and obviously she knew she was doing Wonder Woman 3 before signing up to do Rogue Squadron with Star Wars. So when are we going to see a Wonder Woman 3 at this point? What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, first of all, like you pointed out, I mean, this movie was supposed to come out last, May? All of these decisions were made months and months and months ago. And they just weren't, why announce it? They weren't going to announce it because this is like the ratification of a bill. When a movie comes out and does well, and this movie did it did better than anyone thought it maybe could during the pandemic. Worldwide, it's already taken in over $90 million, which doesn't seem like a lot, but judging by what the release patterns are and how much movies are making worldwide during this pandemic, it's doing all right. And we have no numbers on HBO Max now, but I'll bet you they were talking about how it was 3 times anything else anybody had ever watched on HBO Max. I had a really good experience watching HBO Max. The picture quality is great, and I loved it. But I think, look, like you said, I'm sure she's deep into her Rogue Squadron movie as well, because they are you can work on 2 projects at the same time. And, a movie might take, it depends how long it takes to shoot. But let's say a movie takes, I don't know, a long production schedule's 90 days. So you're going to be in production for 90 days, which is, say, 3 months. You can shoot a movie, then you go into post, and the DGA allows you 10 weeks before you have to turn in a cut to be looked at by the studios. So, let's say it takes her 6 months, and then to shoot and come up with a preliminary edit, and then visual effects are happening, and maybe another year of post-production and all that. So that's like a year and a half. But look at James Gunn. I mean, if you look at what he did with Suicide Squad, then he's going back over to Disney to do Guardians of the Galaxy. we could see 2 movies in 3 years, depending on how quickly people want to work. So I think now, knowing that Wonder Woman 3, whatever it is, she's probably, I would imagine, if you had to bet, if I was a betting man, and I am, I'll bet you there's already a draft of Wonder Woman 3 that they have looked at, and when they say they're moving forward, it's fast tracked. It's because they have a script. So they're probably already in various phases of pre-production on this movie. So maybe as part of her deal, you could see this movie shooting in 2021, and then she starts working on Rogue Squadron in earnest in 2022.
And don't forget, there's also a Cleopatra movie. There's a Cleopatra movie she's supposed to be doing somewhere in there at the same time.
I'm dubious about that film moving forward.
I'm a little bit too. So apparently, according to the numbers, it wasn't the highest viewed thing ever on HBO. That title still belongs to almost every episode of Game of Thrones.
Right.
But it was for an original movie, and they're saying they're estimating that roughly half of HBO Max's subscribers. They didn't also include HBO in general, but half of HBO Max's subscribers tuned in to watch Wonder Woman 84. Of course, this was the first big, what was supposed to be a theatrical film that they put out on HBO Max. So it did very well. And I think it made a little over $16 million at the box office, which is a bigger return than Tenet got in its opening weekend. So they're saying it is the biggest release in the COVID era right now. Of course, they're all looking forward to the post-COVID era. So things could be getting very busy for Patty Jenkins. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. Question is, guys, what do you think about the fact that they've already announced and greenlit Wonder Woman 3? To me, it's a no-brainer. Obviously, we're all hoping it ends up being more like Wonder Woman 1, less like Wonder Woman 2. I believe Patty Jenkins will learn from whatever mistakes they made on Wonder Woman 2. What do you guys think? You looking forward to it or not? Jump down into the comment section below and let me know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With that down, let's do one more main topic here that kind of came in just this morning. This is more breaking news. And here we got is this. The epic saga of the DCEU off-screen, not on-screen, but off-screen, has been something you could make a movie about in and of itself. Of course, it had a really disappointing run for a lot of people. I don't think it should have been considered disappointing. It launched with Man of Steel, which is still one of my favorite comic book movies of all time. But they had a lot of things come out. They struggled. There was a lot of disappointments. It didn't live up to their fan reaction expectations, didn't live up to the critical expectations, didn't live up to the box office expectations. Then they had Wonder Woman, Aquaman was nice. Shazam, I think, was fantastic. Then they stumbled a little bit with Birds of Prey. What happened? Now they got Wonder Woman 84, on and on. But Rob, one of the things that happened in all of that was they decided to put the brakes on what they were doing at one point. Walter Hamada came in, the new sheriff in town, and they said they were going to focus more on individual films. They wanted to get the films up in quality. They wanted to get people associating good thoughts with DC movies again and all that kind of stuff. And for the most part, they've done a pretty good job and heading in the right direction. But now it looks like the floodgates are about to open. The New York Times today put out an article talking about Walter Hamada, who I believe has been doing just a terrific job with stuff over there, and what their plans are after 2021. Now, when we were talking about the Wonder Woman thing, we mentioned that Wonder Woman 3 is going to be planned as a theatrical exclusive release that'll come out on a home video later on. Well, apparently that seems to be the plan. This comes to us from the New York Times that writes the following. The most expensive DC movies, up to 4 a year, starting in 2022, are going to be designed for release in theaters, Mr. Hamada said. Additional superhero films, 2 annually is the goal, perhaps focused on riskier characters like Batgirl and Static Shock, will arrive exclusively on HBO Max, the fledgling streaming service owned by Warner Media. In addition, DC Films, as part of Warner Brothers, will work with filmmakers to develop movie offshoots, TV series that will run on HBO Max and interconnect with their big screen endeavors. With every movie that we're looking at now, we are thinking, what's the potential Max spinoff? Mr. Hamada said. Rob, this represents a major philosophical shift in what Walter Hamada and DC has been doing for the last couple of years. Now, we've always said this focus on just isolating smaller movies, we always knew that was going to be a temporary thing just to try to get DC's footing a little bit more solid again. But to go from what they've been doing to saying, yeah, starting about a calendar year from now, we're going to be aiming to have 4 feature-length, theatrical exclusive, big DC movies per year, as well as 2 smaller budget movies to be for HBO Max. So that's 6 DC movies a year. On top of that, looking at spin-off potential for series on HBO Max at the same time. Now, if any of that sounds familiar to you, well, there's a reason for that. It's exactly the blueprint that Marvel is doing with DC, with Disney Plus. Not saying that DC or Walter Hamada or anybody is trying to copy DC. They're making content and they're going to go for it. But I do think a part of it is they've seen the success they're having over at Marvel with that and say, well, hey, if they can do that, why can't we? If they can put out that amount, that quantity of content and have that kind of success, why can't we? We have engaging characters. We have great decades and decades and decades of great stories, and we have all this great, wonderful stuff. Why not us? Why can't we? They might be saying to themselves. And I've got two thoughts on this. On the one hand, as somebody who liked Aquaman, who loved the first Wonder Woman, Man of Steel to me is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. I love Shazam, all that kind of stuff. The one part of me is like, hell yes. Like, we could be getting back to the era of like getting 8, 9, 10 major comic book films a year. Sign me up. Sign me up. So that's the one half of my brain. The other half of my brain, though, is a little, listen, I'll admit right now, I'm a little bit nervous. It seems like there's no ramp up to this. It seems like they're going to go from their more modest approach to get everything grounded again, and then boom, fire out of the gate with like all this huge ambitious amount of all this content and all these movies in theaters and a couple on HBO Max and spin-off series and blah, blah, blah. And listen, I'm sure there've been a lot of really good discussions going on behind the scenes, Rob, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I hear that and it's a part of me feels like, whoa, really? You're going to try to run that fast? Like, don't you think maybe get a couple more wins under your belt first, maybe ramp up to that, maybe build up to that slowly or whatever. But listen, never say that they lack ambition, because there's a lot of ambition in this. And if you want to, you got to swing for the fences, I suppose, if you want to win it in the bottom of the ninth. I'll throw out every sports analogy here that I can. So I'm a little bit torn. Part of me is really excited. Part of me feels a little bit apprehensive about it. Rob, you hear about this plan. What's your first reaction? What are you thinking about this?
I would say you guys have been in this position before. You thought you were going to build a whole DCEU and you were going to follow Marvel's plan. I think that they should take it slow. With Birds of Prey coming out, and that didn't exactly set the world on fire. And now you have Wonder Woman 84 that is very it's divisive in terms of the fan base and the audience. I think that in practice, in theory, it's great what they want to do. But in practice, you live and die by the quality of your content. And I think they really need to focus on characters and story. Once again, they're focusing on their universe. And you know what I always say, John? My first axiom in entertainment these days is never put your universe before your characters or your story. And if they have great characters and great stories to show us, terrific. More power to you. But who's going to make all of these things? And are they going to be great? Because they have to be great. And I never hear anybody say that. Like, we're going to concentrate on making the greatest renditions of our characters and our stories possible. It's always, we're going to put these characters, it's going to be Batgirl and it's going to be Static Shock and blah, blah, blah. Well, who are the creators that are going to work on these things? And what are the characters and stories that you're going to concentrate on? Nobody ever talks about that. And that always gives me pause, because I'm like, it's great that you want to make all this stuff, but you got to make it good first. That's why people will keep coming back to the Marvel Cinematic Universe has 23 films, whether you want to complain about it or not, with an average box office gross over all those movies of $1 billion each. That's $23 billion in box office. There's a reason why that happened. And that's what they should be looking at. Not the numbers, but the reason why they were able to put up those numbers. And it's not just because they're generic comic book movies. And I'd love to see a great Batgirl film. But who's going to make it? Who's going to star in it? Who's going to write it? I'm more interested in that. Convince me.
And here's my fear. My fear is, and I'm only saying it's a fear. I'm not saying this is what will happen. It's just what I'm nervous of. My fear is the old habits of Warner Brothers may sneak back in. Because we've seen this song and dance before, Rob, over at Warner Brothers, where they announce all these films they're going to do, and we've got this and this and this and this and this. And then as soon as they hit some adversity, as soon as they stumble, they pulled all of their plans.
Yep.
And what I'm a little bit nervous of is like, okay, so the next thing comes out, it doesn't do so well. Are they just going to now pull the plug on everything? Are they getting ahead of themselves? Now, one of the interesting things also in this article, Rob, because you hear 4 movies a year, 2 on HBO Max, new series. A lot of people have been talking about, like, is the Snyderverse going to continue after this Justice League on HBO miniseries that they're doing? This is interesting. According to that same article in the New York Times, talking to Walter Hamada, they said this. They said, at least for now, Mr. Snyder is not a part of the new DC Films blueprint, with studio executives describing his HBO Max project as a storytelling cul-de-sac, a street that leads nowhere. By the way, that phrase does not mean they don't think what he's making is good. It's just saying it seems, according to this, that they're doing this, but it's not going anywhere. Like it's a special thing for people who asked for it and wanted it, and we think it'll draw some attention to HBO Max. So away we go. We're going to do it. So they're saying, at least for now, all these big plans we have moving down the future, none of it includes Snyder, which I got to say, I have personally not been expecting Snyder to do much more with Warner Brothers after this miniseries. But when I first read the first few paragraphs about them doing 4 theatrical films, 2 HBO things, plus series, my first thought was, well, man, they must be doing more with Snyder. They must be doing more coming out of this Justice League. So I got to admit, I'm a little bit surprised to read that from there. What about you, Rob? Are you surprised to hear that? Were you expecting to see more Snyder moving forward in the DCEU?
What's the most exciting thing that DC has going right now? The Snyder Cut of Justice League. And I what they're doing, all the extra money that they're spending on this, the fact that they're bolstering all of these characters. Obviously we're going to see more Wonder Woman in the Snyder Cut. And I find it, John, odd, to be honest. I think that maybe the executives at Warner Brothers might not have been so keen. If it wasn't for AT&T saying, hey, let's go do this, I don't know if Warner Brothers would have. And now it's going to be really interesting. If the Snyder Cut of Justice League, which I guess we're getting in March, is really good, well, then where's DC going to be? Where's Walter Hamada going to be?
But that's a huge assumption. Like, because here's the thing, though. It's not like, and we've had this discussion before, it's not like they have no sample size for what kind of results do we get when Zack Snyder puts out DCEU content. They have a pretty ample sample size. They put out Man of Steel, again, one of my all-time favorite comic book movies, but the reality is half the audience hated it, half the critics hated it, and it underperformed at the box. It didn't do terribly, but it underperformed for what a Superman movie should have done. Then they did Batman versus Superman. Half the audience hated it, half the critics hated it, and it drastically underperformed at the box office. And so they already have a sample size. It's not like they've never worked with Zack Snyder in the DCEU and they're just waiting to see what this Justice League is going to be. So I don't know. So we asked this question, what if it's really good? Well, really good to who? Because to me, Man of Steel is beyond really good, right?
Yep.
But at the end of the day, that doesn't matter because it didn't make the money. It didn't get the reaction from the fans or from the audience. So I don't know. To me, it feels like AT&T and Warner Brothers, they are basically using Zack Snyder and using the Snyder Cut fans to get attention to HBO Max. And they're going to put that out for that. But I mean, I don't know. What if? Let's go into a fantasy land. Because right now, there's no reason to believe, there's no quantifiable data to believe that after putting out a bunch of stuff that half the audience hated, that suddenly magically people are going to love Zack Snyder's vision of the DCEU. But let's say, for argument's sake, that it blows everybody away. That all the audience who have hated his previous stuff get on board with it. That all the critics who hated his previous stuff get on board with it. And it like smashes all kinds of records. And all these things happen that are extremely unlikely. But if it happens, I mean, if they're talking about in a 3-year span from 2022 to the end of 2024, in a 3-year span, having 12 feature theatrical films, 6 HBO exclusive films, and anywhere between 4 to 8 HBO DC series, you gotta think Snyder becomes an option. I mean, do you not? Like, does it at that point, if you're talking about needing to unload that kind of content, does Snyder not become an option at that point? What do you think?
I think it really depends on the performance of the Snyder cut of Justice League. If the Snyder cut of Justice League becomes a runaway monster success, as you always say, John, winning cures everything.
Winning cures everything.
And remember, the focus now, whatever Walter Hamada wants to say, the focus now is on HBO Max. It's on their streaming service. And if the Snyder cut becomes some runaway thing that garners or generates tens of thousands of new subscriptions and HBO Max, it's a huge success, I think it changes the balance of power. I think that AT&T is going to be like, yeah, we understand what you guys think, but Zack Snyder is going to be, if you watch what's going on with his Army of the Dead film is now generating a new animated series, and they're making a prequel movie to it. So Zack Snyder is becoming, apparently the animated series is going to be streaming. I think that's for Netflix, right? Army of the Dead.
Yeah.
So he's building his own little fiefdom over at Netflix on his based on his Army of the Dead movie. He's got the movie coming out, the prequel's getting made, and the animated series. And at the same time, over at HBO Max, you've got Zack Snyder doing the Snyder Cut. I could see somebody, and if the Snyder Cut's great, Zack Snyder's going to be in a position of, I'm going to sign an exclusive deal. And who am I going to sign an exclusive deal with? Who's going to respect me more as a filmmaker, as a creator, and give me more money? And Warner Brothers could lose Zack Snyder to Netflix. I mean, I was watching, Dave Chappelle talking about what it's like to work for Netflix and how Dave Chappelle said, you know what? The Chappelle show was stolen from me, and I don't get any money from it, and you're going to put it on. And my comedy specials are making you guys, Netflix, a lot of money. Netflix said, you know what, Dave Chappelle? You're right. We're not going to show the Chappelle show. We're going to stay in business with one of our biggest draws, and we're going to keep you happy because that's what talent does. That's what you do for talent. And I think what's really interesting is Zack Snyder is now in a position where he's going to be able to call his own shots and be like, you know what, Warner Brothers and HBO Max? I appreciate your letting me do the Snyder Cut. But I've got this thing going on at Netflix, and if you want me to work on other DC movies, you're going to pony up that cheddar, buddy.
But there's a big difference between Chappelle and Snyder. Chappelle has decades of success, popularity, success.
And his new comedy shows are making huge
bank. They're doing great for them. If, and this is a huge if the Justice League HBO miniseries turns out to be a huge hit, that still just means Snyder, when it comes to the DCU, as far as business goes, is 1 for 3. 1 for 3.
Well,
it doesn't put him in the same position as a Dave Chappelle.
Well, but think about it. It's not like he made movies that didn't earn. They just didn't earn what the studio thought they were going to earn. Their expectations, I think, were inflated. If you look at the money that Man of Steel did, it did more money than the first Captain America movie. It did more money than a lot of the initial origin Marvel stories until later on. it was very much comparable. They just thought that because it's Superman, we're going to come conquer the box office without any consideration as to what Marvel was actually doing. And I think if you look at okay, Sucker Punch didn't do great, but I think he has a pretty respectable track record. And remember, Netflix.
I think he's got a great track record outside of DC, because you look at like, notwithstanding Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch is the only Zack Snyder film I don't like. Like every other Zack Snyder film is from I like to I love. But I mean, the reality is though, like by the time Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman came out, Marvel had cultivated the fandom for comic book movies to making comic book movies the most popular thing in the box office. The fact is, his movies, despite how much you and I love them, they lost half the audience. Half the audience hated his films. Half the critics hated his films. They underperformed. I mean, again, I just think if Justice League is a big hit, and that's a big if, but if it is, it still leaves him from Warner Brothers' perspective as 1 for 3. And I just don't know that puts him in a power position like Christopher Nolan had with Warner Brothers with making his demands. You know what I mean?
I'm just saying though that rightly or wrongly, he's got 3 projects based around Army of the Dead, including Army of the Dead.
But it's important to point out, nobody's seen Army of the Dead yet.
No, they haven't.
I mean, so what happens if that comes out and it's received like Sucker Punch was, or received like Batman versus Superman was? Like, what happens to all these lofty plans? But what if it's great? I mean, I don't know. There's still so much undecided.
But Netflix is all in. They've greenlit the prequel movie, and they're in production on their animated series, all based. So they've got 3 of these projects of Zack Snyder controlled projects that, no one's seen them, but Netflix has. So they're pretty confident, and Netflix is like,
Netflix greenlights everything.
But what I'm saying is that they're also, what Netflix is doing smartly is they're locking up creators.
That's true. That's true.
Pay.
Yeah,
they pay. And what I'm saying is that, over at DC, you've got Walter Hamada you're dealing with the AT&T executives, and there's a power struggle going on there. Regardless, I mean, you've got Toby Emmerich trying to curry favor with the executives over at AT&T because the studio itself is not necessarily as powerful as HBO Max is, whereas Netflix is like, yep, here's some money, go make your thing. And it's really about, where does Zack Snyder, if I'm a creator and I've got movies being made there, I'd be like, I'm going to go where they're going to pay me, and I'm going to have the least amount of creative interference.
And I just don't know.
Part of politics.
I just don't know the Warner Brothers is going to try to stop him from walking out the door. I don't know.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It really depends on if the Snyder Cut is great or if it's just more of the same stuff. I mean, it's really going to, again, the proof. What's great is that everybody just votes with the results are in, and it's like, did it make money or did it not?
Look, either way, it was a great move for them to put this on HBO Max. It was a terrific move for them to put it on there. And let's see what the ramifications will be. Question is, guys, back to the original issue here. What do you think about this story coming out of the New York Times, this interview with Walter Hamada, that they're looking at doing up to 4 major theatrical films per year, plus 2 HBO Max exclusives, plus spin-off series to put on? It's pretty damn ambitious. You can't take that away from it. It's ambitious. Are you like the one half of me that's super excited about this? Or are you like the other half of me that's a little bit skeptical about it maybe? What do you guys think about it? Jump down into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. Okay, guys. With all that down and out of the way, let's now move in and start taking your live questions. Now, I'm going to let you guys know, we haven't done a John Campea show since 2 days before Christmas. Right? Since Wednesday. We have a lot of questions you guys have sent in to get caught up on. So we're not going to get caught up on all of them today, but we will do as many as we can today. Plus I'll do a companion video a little bit later. We'll get caught up and we'll get caught all the way up. Just going to let you guys know that. But if you guys do want to send in a comment or question, if you want to support the show and tip to the show and get a question on the show as well, if the question's within reason, all you got to do is go to the tip link that's near the top of the description of this video. You can just click on it there, or enter it in manually at streamelements.com/movieblogtv/tip. going over there and you see the top line, your name, a lot of people forget to type in your name, guys. And so it just comes up as anonymous. Please make sure to type in your name, because if you guys support this channel and send in a question, I want to make sure I read your name out. So try to make sure to remember to put in your name there. Send it in. And if your question's within reason and not unreasonable, you'll be seeing your comment or question on the show. And of course, you'll be supporting the show at the same time. And all of us here involved with the show, thank you guys very, very much for your support. All right. With that down, let's get caught up now on all these questions that have been coming in for the last 5 days since our last John Campea show. Let's start rolling here. First thing up here is a fan of Peanuts who writes, "Hey John, happy holidays to you and Ann. Thank you so much. Are all 3 of the original trilogies 10s for you?" Yes, they are. Would they be 10A, B, and C essentially? Yes, they are. My order for the Star Wars movie episodic films are Empire Strikes Back, New Hope, Return of the Jedi, The Last Jedi, Rogue One, The Force Awakens, The Rise of Skywalker, Revenge of the Sith, Solo, The Phantom Menace, last to Attack of the Clones. Yeah. I mean, yeah, to me, it's like the original trilogy for me is my favorite one is Return of the Jedi, then Empire, then A New Hope. So that's my top 3 Star Wars movies. Then down at the bottom are the prequels. And then in the middle for me, you've got The Force Awakens, then Rogue One, then Last Jedi. And then you know what, Rob, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I might even put Revenge of the Sith above The Rise of Skywalker. I never thought I would move one of the prequel movies out of the absolute basement, but I think I might actually put Revenge of the Sith above Rise of Skywalker. So that's probably my ranking there. But yeah, I don't know. But
wow, John, that's a big admission for you.
That's a huge. I never thought that would happen. I'm not putting Revenge of, or The Rise of Skywalker below, say, Attack of the Clones. But, out of all the prequels, Revenge of the Sith is the least offensive, and I think I might have even appreciated that one more than I did Rise of Skywalker. So, yeah, anyway, there's that. Okay, let's move on here. Next up, Aaron C. writes, "Hey, John, I know Loki is being described as a crime show, and the last part of it where he's in the plane and jumps out really reminds me of the unsolved mystery of D.B. Cooper." I was thinking the same thing. It reminded me of D.B. Cooper. Do you think he'll be the culprit of many unsolved mysteries in the show? I don't think so. Rob, there's kind of this notion that maybe they tie it into real world thing and they make Loki the mastermind behind real world unsolved crimes. I don't think they're going to do that. I do think it's going to be a great heist show though. Rob, you saw the trailer for Loki. What are your expectations for the show right now?
Dude, I'm like this. It looks exactly like it should be. I mean, there's one shot where Loki looks like he's leading the Time Bandits, this merry band of brigands. I've said that twice in this show, but it looks so much fun. I mean, look, we have to see. I think that Wanda Vision is going to be as far as a bellwether goes, a big deal, because it looks like Wanda Vision is creatively bonkers. It looks like they're trying something really new that also looks really interesting. Like this, why has Wanda, what's going on there? I don't know, but I'm really intrigued. The Falcon and Winter Soldier looks great. And Loki looks great, and they all look really different, and I think that if they are, and yet they're all part of the greater Marvel Cinematic Universe, I think that's, again, a bold creative choice that they're making. And Adelson looks like he's having a great time making this show, and everybody loves Loki. I mean, they should make a sitcom called Everybody Loves Loki, where he just causes mischief, just to mess with people.
Well, I think that's what this show is going to be. So I think you're about to get your wish.
I certainly, my wish for Wonder Woman 84 wasn't what I had hoped, but maybe this will be. It looks great.
I renounce that wish. All right, next up, we go back to a fan of Peanuts who writes, "Hey, John, any chance for some play-in chats tonight / this holiday weekend?" This would have been this past weekend. Chill and play. Also, have you seen The Society on Netflix? Most Netflix shows are utter garbage, but this one was well done for me. Just finished HBO's Euphoria, 9 out of 10. I'm not seen The Society. I'm not really familiar with it. And I have been doing more I haven't done any play-in chats the last week or so, but I've been getting back into doing play-in chats in the evening, which has been great. I've picked back up with the new expansion coming out, the World of Warcraft, playing a little Free Guys or Fall Guys. Fall Guys, isn't it? Free Guy is the Ryan Reynolds film. I've been playing a little bit of Fall Guys and some online poker. So yeah, you will see more play-in chats coming up in the upcoming thing here. Thanks for that, Fan of Peanuts. Ryan Lohner writes, 1 of 2. My one serious concern about a potential Dune movie series is that the books have a ton of, shall we say, dated views on gender and sexuality. And it's not like you can just remove a few offensive lines. It's actually a central part of the mythos that men are inherently superior to women, and homosexuality is evil. I don't think they ever really said that. Of course, I must trust Villeneuve more than some other people I could name to be able to handle this. Now, listen, I think, Rob, I've heard some people bring up the concern. And by the way, thanks to Zerker for sending in a super chat badge. Thanks for that, man. I really appreciate that. There are, I've heard a lot of people bring this up, but because listen, in Dune, there is a scene where Baron Harkonnen, it comes out that he, I want something young and fresh and whatever, and he sleeps with young boys and blah, blah, blah. Some people interpret that as Dune itself saying that homosexuality is inherently evil because the bad guy does it. I've never interpreted it that way, because how many evil villains have we seen in movies are heterosexuals? Is that the movie saying that heterosexuality is evil? No, of course not. By the way, the thing that was really disgusting about Baron Harkonnen was it wasn't the fact that it was with males, it was the fact that it was with children. That's what made him so vile. So I personally don't think it is that prevalent or really that much of an issue, but listen, it's been forever since I've really gotten into the Dune lore. I don't know it as well as you do. How would you respond to what Ryan's concerns are?
Well, one of Frank Herbert's actual sons in real life was a gay rights activist, and Frank Herbert's relationship with him was strained. But again, here's kind of my thoughts on all of this. Our civilization, human beings, are constantly evolving. And we're constantly becoming, I would like to believe, more enlightened about things. Now, Dune was written at a period of time. It also relies heavily. There's a lot of Islam in Dune as well. A lot of inspiration, the Fremen, things like that, and which I think is actually very cool. I like the fact that Frank Herbert embraced various world cultures and extrapolated upon them for his universe. Now, I just look, I think in the movie they're not sexuality, aside from Chani's relationship with Paul, there's not a whole lot of sexuality going on in Dune. It's sand is coarse and it gets everywhere. And I just think that while there are problematic aspects to these things, I think that we don't have to worry about those things necessarily in the movie, because it doesn't really rely on those elements or even have those elements in the film. And I think, right now we're in our world, everybody's is looking for a voice. There's many marginalized people and there's people that haven't had a voice before that for the very first time are getting a voice, which is amazing. The problem is we can't overcompensate. You can't go and say, we're going to go change something that was written 55 years ago and make it the way it should be today, because that's not really fair to our history, nor is it fair to a creator that worked well in a less enlightened time. And I think that you have to rely on filmmakers to, I don't think Denis Villeneuve is going to make something offensive or is going to have something that has representation that's going to bother a significant portion of our population now, because the creators that are working today are keenly aware of the kind of representation that we can now have and the voices of people that are now out there. So I would trust to the filmmakers to do the right thing.
The one thing I would add to that is that we often see in movies filmmakers taking older stories, whether they're older novels or older versions of movies, and adding, removing, changing things to things that they think would work better today, outside of like controversial issues, like even just regular things. Like, you know what? That may have worked back then. Him using a rotary phone to murder the the shopkeeper, that doesn't work today. We're going to change things to make them work today a little bit more. So I think you'll probably see a little bit of that in wherever and whenever Denis Villeneuve thinks it works for the story. But I trust Villeneuve. Like, I think Villeneuve's going to make the right decisions in whatever level.
I do too. And like Liet Kynes, who's the mother, Chani's mother, in the movie, was a dude. You know, Max von Sydow played him in Lynch's version, and he's already gender swapped certain characters. And what's interesting to me is, like, a lot of people get up in arms about that stuff, but even if you're looking at a movie today, if I was adapting Dune, I too would want a little bit more feminine energy in different areas of the story. And I don't think that's, a lot of people are angry about that, Dune purists. But I think, look, even when you talk about Lord of the Rings, Tom Bombadil was a character that they're like, well, I don't know what we're really going to do with this character. So they removed him from the movie.
Everybody forgets about that.
That's what adaptation is. And, you know, I don't have a problem if you're going to gender swap somebody. If you want to make a character gay or bisexual or something, then you're adding elements that, well, are you going to have time to deal with that? Or is it going to seem just tokenistic? And I think, look, you can explore new and different things in adaptations when they're done correctly. And I think you've got to trust in the creators like a Peter Jackson or like a Denis Villeneuve to do the right thing. And I think they've earned that, you know, over their films.
All right, next up, we go to Shane Bennis, who writes, do you think Moff Gideon knew that he would lose to Mando in combat, and that by losing the Darksaber to Mando, it would create conflict with Bo-Katan, and that would buy enough time for the Dark Troopers to make it back to the ship? Nope. I think he very well thought he was going to win. I think he thought he was going to beat Mando, and that would give him all the time he needed for the Dark Troopers to get back on the ship and then go retake the bridge. So he knew he was screwed when Luke Skywalker showed up, but no, he thought he was going to beat Mando. He thought he was going to beat Mando in that fight. Jalen Pryor writes, hey, John, hope all is well. Thank you so much, Jalen. Pardon me. So I was thinking about Spider-Man and Tobey coming back. I know it's not 100% confirmed, but if he is really back, does that mean technically make the Raimi Spider-Man films in the first chronologically canon MCU films? How will this work? Well, listen, even if they do bring him back, and Rob, you and I talked about this about a week ago, I think, like, even if Garfield comes back and if Maguire comes back, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are exactly the same ones from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 1 and 2 and from The Amazing Spider-Man 1 2. They could be different versions of those Spider-Men. Plus, I mean, when you're getting into this alternate stuff, and remember, Jamie Foxx said that his Electro isn't the exact same Electro we saw before. Don't expect to see the same Electro. So there's a lot to that. But no, I don't think that necessarily makes it canon. We'll have to see what they do in the movie. But Rob, do you think them showing up suddenly makes those Spider-Man movies canon to the MCU?
Well, if you're talking about a multiverse, you know, I mean, it seems like that's what we're talking about. It could be, you know, that when you're talking about tripping dimensions or whatever, then anything's possible.
When you're tripping dimensions, I love it. When you're tripping dimensions. All right. The Wakanda Forever writes, John, I said don't laugh. Okay, maybe saying Mark Hamill had a better career than Harrison Ford was a stretch, but I still say Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Best of the best, my best friend's wedding, Life is Beautiful are on the list. Have my Kleenex ready. Yeah, those are all films that get me really. Best of the best always gets me man tears for sure. Best friend's wedding, Life is Beautiful. Those are the ones that always get me going for sure. And yeah. So Wakanda Forever also writes, will you be doing a Wonder Woman spoiler discussion? Obviously I did. This was a few days ago. Best/worst films of the year, most anticipated for 2021. I will not be doing a best films, worst films of 2020. There's just no point. There's no point. But I will be doing a special live stream in the next couple of days to discuss our most anticipated upcoming 2021 films. That is coming, so keep your eyes open for that. It's been a crazy year, but I thought I'd ask again. Thank you for and the community for helping me get through this year. Happy holidays, Wakanda Forever. Thanks a lot for that, man. I appreciate that. All right, Willow writes, and tips in $20. Thank you, Willow, for supporting the channel on that level. Appreciate that. Merry Christmas to you, Anne, and your family. 2020 may have been a terrible year, but you have made a movie and purchased your first house. Do you have any goals or resolutions made for 2021? Wow. You know, Rob, I am one of those guys that I like getting to the end of the year and making goals and making New Year's resolutions. I'm one of those guys that I like doing that. But I'll tell you what, between the crap fest that 2020 has been, getting the movie done, and now I've got it out and we're still marketing, Movie Trailers, A Love Story, the documentary about movie trailers. If you're a movie fan, you should totally go watch it. Anyway, plug. And now buying our house, and now we're getting our house renovated, getting ready to move. I haven't thought about New Year's resolutions for 2021 at all. And I usually do. Have you made any thoughts, had any thoughts about New Year's resolutions you have for 2021, Rob?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to live my years as far as projects go, projects that I want to complete. Getting something more on my IMDb profile is to come out in whatever year. So, I've got a few projects that I've been working on pretty diligently, and I would like to see them reach fruition. So that's what I'm always doing, because I find that, planning for, like, would I like to have Brad Pitt's body and work out and become a monster, not huge and gigantic, but just look great and sinewy? Sure. So every year I think I'm going to go hit the gym, but that means I have to drink less wine, which I enjoy. So it's a trade-off. But in terms of projects, things that I love to stay creatively focused, and I'm always trying to do that. And I think, when you think about projects, like a perfect example, John, is what you did with Movie Trailers, A Love Story. You'd been thinking about it for a while, and then for whatever reason, you decided, well, now's the time. You pulled the trigger, and you went head first into making this thing, and you relentlessly pursued it and finished it. And I think that's the way to, I think that's the way to live, especially with what we do. We talk about other people's creativity, but I think it's really important we stay engaged with our own creativity. It helps us. It helps our perspective in talking about movies and television and what we talk about. And then you go out and do it yourself. It all feeds off of itself, and you learn more about your craft. You also learn more about what you're reporting on, and I think making things happen is always gratifying. So I think having goals, no matter what they are, they could be like, I want to plant a vegetable garden, or I'd like to knit a sweater, whatever it is, whatever your thing is, to plan on doing it and then actually do it and execute it. Whether anybody else pays any attention, it doesn't matter. It's you pay attention. And there's nothing more gratifying than thinking something up, going out and making it, and then having it finished in the end.
All right. Good words. All right. Next up, go Poirier because F Connor. Yeah, I'm going to be cheering for Poirier. That's going to be a great fight, though. Over, under, or exactly 50%. Cal Kestis or BD1 shows up in one of the Filoni-verse shows. Ahsoka, Rangers. Well, let's be clear here. This is the Favreau-verse. This isn't the Filoni-verse. Let's just be clear about that. Ahsoka, Rangers, Boba, Mando, etc. And by the way, Fallen Order sequel is confirmed for fall of 2022. I low-key hope title is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Jedi, and he turns to the dark side. I don't expect that. Listen, I thought Cal showing up in Mandalorian was a possibility. Right? My main pick, like I said, Skywalker is definitely picked because he's out there and all that kind of stuff. I was willing to put my $5 on Ezra because Ezra was already in Dave Filoni's Rebels, right? So I was already kind of expecting that, but I knew Cal was a possibility too. I thought there was a half decent chance it could be Cal. But the reality is, Filoni is kind of like, in a way, Kevin Feige, in the sense that it seems like Filoni just likes to play with his own toys. And I don't know that for sure, but so far from what we've seen, Filoni likes to play with his own toys. I haven't seen him want to go out or Favreau for that matter, to want to go out and pull in something like Cal from the video game, which Favreau and Dave Filoni really didn't have much to do with. So my guess is it a possibility? Yeah, I thought it was a possibility Cal could show up in Mandalorian. So I still think it's a possibility, but I'm going to take way under 50% that he shows up in one of these other shows. Rob, what do you think the chances are that Fallen Order's Cal character shows up in one of these shows upcoming? It's hard to say. I mean, after this season of Mandalorian, I take nothing off the table. I mean, they're mining the animated shows which I think is great. And Filoni, like you said, likes to play with his own toys, but I think that's okay.
I think that there's when a creator is developing, obviously Ahsoka has gone from being an animated character in what you had Clone Wars, then moving over to Rebels, now going to the Mandalorian, and now getting her own show. Well, that's a pretty amazing evolution of a character that was originally introduced. She was introduced in Clone Wars, I think, right?
Which character?
Ahsoka.
Yeah, in Clone Wars, she was introduced.
Yeah, so the fact that we've seen the evolution, I went from one animated show to another animated show to a live action show to my own show. And I think that's the kind of thing that we want to see. And I think that there are other characters. Wasn't it Kyle Katarn? Isn't that the name of the character from Shadows of the Empire?
Oh, I can't remember. Yeah.
I want to see him show up.
Yeah.
I love Shadows of the Empire.
I love that. Everything's a possibility. Everything's a possibility.
I take nothing off the table, man.
Yeah. I will just say, I think it's under 50% though. Totally still a possibility, but I'll take under 50%. All right. Min Tran writes, John, you said if Warner Brothers and Legendary go to court over Godzilla v. Kong and Dune, Legendary would win. Oh yeah, they would win like that. Can you explain why they would win? Simple. When, first of all, Legendary basically paid for those movies. They put up 75% of the financing money to make both Dune and Godzilla versus Kong. And they did so explicitly. They put up that, when you take money from somebody and give them a belief and an understanding that this is what's going to happen with the money you give us, you have legal obligations at that point. When Warner Brothers suddenly came out and announced that they were going to put Dune and Godzilla vs. Kong straight to HBO Max, which violated the agreement and understanding they had with Legendary, who paid for the movies, they put themselves into a corner. Now, that's why if this goes to court, look, anything strange can happen in the world, but believe this, Warner Brothers will lose that court case. All they have to do is, all Legendary has to do is hold up one piece of paper that says, here's the communication between us and Warner Brothers when we first paid for this stuff 3 years ago, when we made the agreement and they said this thing was going to be theatrical, and we gave them the money. And that's it. That's all the judge has to see. Done. Now, this is true. This is why it was reported in Deadline last week, Rob, that Warner Brothers and Legendary had entered into negotiations, because Warner Brothers knows they can't let this go to court because they lose if it goes to court. So they went to Legendary and said, let's make a deal. And apparently, they haven't verified this yet, but apparently, according to the trades, the deal is going to be Dune is going to be put back into the theatrical release, and Godzilla vs. Kong will stay on as a HBO Max release, but they have to give, what was it, 250 million? Yes, or something like that. They have to pay Legendary. They have to put it on HBO Max, and they have to pay Legendary 250 million or something along those lines. So this is all happening. If Warner Brothers thought they had any chance to win in court, they would not have made this deal. They make this deal and negotiated with Legendary because they knew they would lose in court. Because when you take money from somebody with the understanding that you are going to do certain things with their money, and then you backtrack on that, you're going to lose in court. You're going to lose in court. It's just that simple. So that's why we have Warner Brothers and Legendary negotiating behind the scenes now to work this out without it going to court. And I fully believe it will be completely resolved without it having to go to court. But it's going to be resolved in part because Warner Brothers is going to have to backtrack on a number of things that they've said, which is appropriate at this point. Okay, next up. This won't happen, but... right. Hypothetically, let's say Grogu, that's Baby Yoda, is reason why sequels change. In sequel timeline, Gideon shot... Let me see this again. Hypothetically, let's say Grogu is the reason why sequels change. The sequels aren't changing. In sequel timeline, Gideon shot Grogu before Mando blocks it. And in new timeline, where he lives, Grogu F's Kylo up and he doesn't turn dark. Grogu changing is the only way to make the fan base. Listen, all this talk and whatever that I remember, Rob, back in the day, like when the prequels are happening and all these people screaming, take the prequels out of canon, take the prequels on, delegitimize them. They're not canon. Forget about them, blah, blah, blah. They never did that. And they're not going to do it with the sequels either.
No,
they're going to work around it. But whenever you see a website or somebody claiming, Star Wars is going to renounce the sequel trilogy and they're going to write them out of canon. No, they're not. Just move past. If they didn't do it for the prequels, they're not doing it here. It made them too much money, all that kind of stuff. They'll just work around it. They'll move on from one story, go on to the next story. That's the great thing about the Star Wars universe, Rob. At the end of The Rise of Skywalker, you can now go on and tell any other stories in the universe about anything. Like, those other things still happened in the sequel trilogy, but you can still tell different stories. And that's what they'll do. They'll move on from the sequel trilogy, but they are not writing them out of canon. They're just not going to do that. Rob, what's your take on that?
I completely agree. And what they will do is they'll use stories to fill in all of the gaps, that all those question marks that Rise of Skywalker left in your mind. Like, how did this happen? And they'll figure out interesting ways to answer those questions. So then they'll have canonical, they'll have shows where you can, once you've seen all of these things, and when you watch Rise of Skywalker, it'll appear better because, like, oh, they fixed it over here in this show or that show, or now we get it. So it'll all be one. Look, in 10 or 15 years, all of the Star Wars shows that they're making now, it'll all be part of the continuum that is Star Wars. So the Rise of Skywalker, instead of being seen as, oh, the third movie of the third trilogy, you're now going to be having it surrounded with all of these other shows, and it'll be part of a continuum. And so the generations that are coming after us will not see the Rise of Skywalker as a disappointment, assuming that they're going to fix the things that we don't like about it. They're going to see it as just another part of this huge tapestry that is Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, remember too, like, when you look at the prequels, they just basically ignore the prequels. Like, all the stuff that's come afterwards, other than the odd reference here and there, all the Star Wars stuff that has come since has basically ignored the prequels. They don't remove the prequels from canon. They are canon. It is a part of the history and real. I kind of suspect they'll do the same thing for the most part with the sequel trilogy. They'll just move on and reference it where they need to. Like you're saying, Rob, maybe fill in some gaps here and there where they want to. But for the most part, I think they're just going to tell new stories and just kind of move on from it and kind of say, yeah, that's there, but we'll just move on. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how they choose to deal with it. A lot of good stuff coming, though. A lot of good stuff coming. All right. Arnie Asada, I love that name. Arnie Asada writes, since Disney Plus Star Wars is absolutely following a beat-by-beat MCU model, do you think we'll see every fighting space dogs on Tatooine, then suddenly Mando and Grogu beam into battle, and Mando shouts, "Bring me Thranos"? No, I mean, look, we did talk the other day. Variety had a really interesting article pointing out that they are now kind of shifting. Disney decided they wanted a certain model with their content. Marvel was kind of first one in the door to do it. And now they're applying that same kind of model. Again, there was a great article in Variety about this, about how they are now clearly applying that same model to the Star Wars universe with all these shows, theatrical releases, tying in an integrated world, all that kind of stuff. So it is. I don't expect to see specific movie beat by beat plot points, but yeah, just the overall pattern of what the universe itself could be. It's going to be interesting to see how well it does or does not work. All right, R tipped. I keep seeing fans throw out big names for Thrawn when Lars Mikkelsen, his voice actor, is right there. Dude has been cheekbones. He's 6'4" and he already plays him. Of course, they don't have to go that route. I'm just stunned he hasn't mentioned more. Here's the thing, all I hear is people talking Lars Mikkelsen. That's all I hear. Rob, you and I have talked about this on the show. That's all people are talking about is Lars Mikkelsen. Look, if anything, just because somebody did the voice of something doesn't necessarily mean they'll be the appropriate person to bring in and do the on-screen character. It doesn't mean they're not. It just doesn't automatically mean it. We just saw that, of course, with Ahsoka Tano. Ashley Eckstein? I keep forgetting how to pronounce the last name. Anyway, the girl who has voiced Ahsoka from the very beginning in all the TV shows, in all the games, in all the little special stuff, blah. A lot of people are upset that they didn't get her to play Ahsoka Tano. The reality is voice acting is infinitely different than actually on-camera, on-screen acting. And they went out and got one of the best actresses out there in Rosario Dawson, who is, all due respect to Ashley, but Rosario Dawson is a much better on-camera actress than Ashley is, which is no shade because Rosario Dawson is much better than 95% of the actresses out there. If you can get Rosario Dawson to play your character, you get Rosario Dawson. As far as Lars Mikkelsen goes, I can't speak to how good or bad of an on-camera actor he is. But that is your first priority. If you think he is a strong actor, if you're the executives, if you're Favreau, whatever, and you think he's a strong actor and he fits the Thrawn you want to write for this series, then go for it. But just because he does the voice in the cartoon show does not mean he has to be the guy to do it. So I'm good either way. Rob, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I guess I'm good either way too. I think that's kind of the way to be in this situation. One way or another, why not? Absolutely.
By the way, I want to throw this out there. In our live chat board, Darren J. Seeley is mentioning Katie Sackhoff. Katie Sackhoff is a great example. Katie Sackhoff has done the voice of Bo-Katan in the show, in the cartoons, but she also has a huge, extensive, big, high-profile project resume of on-screen acting at the same time. So and Katie Sackhoff is great. So when you can do that, go for it. And
dude, absolutely. I mean, she brings she brings all that great Starbuck baggage from Battlestar Galactica. I mean, she's already cool for everybody.
Yeah, she is a great on-screen actress. She's perfect for it. And that's why I said, if Favreau feels that Lars's resume justifies that and that he thinks he is that strong of an actor on screen and all that kind of stuff, and they decide to go with him, great. It doesn't have to be that. Like, it didn't have to be Katie Sackhoff either. I'm glad it was.
No,
but it didn't have to be Katie.
I have to say, that's one of the things that we've talked about it before, but the casting for Mandalorian is wacky and out of the box, and yet also at the same time incredibly awesome and on point. I mean, the fact that you've got Werner Herzog and Carl Weathers, and now Carl Weathers is directing and doing a good job of it. And then you've got, Cara Dune and Bo-Katan and Ahsoka Tano, and the people that are playing these characters are perfection. And they're not necessarily the people you thought would have got the jobs.
Yeah. All right, let's move on here. Next up, Bucky Rocks writes, "This is how I handle the aging in Star Wars. Remember, these are not Earthlings, true. They are humanoids. So who the hell knows how they age? This is set in a galaxy far, far away. We can't expect our Earther age to them. Love the Expanse." I mean, yeah, so that's come up a lot because somebody sent in a great thing, Rob, where they showed, okay, so obviously Boba Fett is supposed to be, I think, about 15 to 20 years younger than Bo-Katan. And yet, when we come into the show, the years have been a lot rougher, apparently, to Boba Fett than they have been to Bo-Katan. But obviously you can throw in there the issue of, hey, look, Baby Yoda is like 50 years old, and look at him, different species, in the different galaxy far, far away, they age differently. That being said, when you look at Star Wars, Luke, Leia, and Han are all from different planets and different worlds, but they're human, and they all age the same. This is one of those situations, Rob, where Lucasfilm in the last number of years has taken a lot of liberties with canon. And as long as for the purposes of telling your story, I've come to live with it. You know me, Rob, I used to be very, very fanatical about canon is canon. Don't you dare fucking break canon, But the last couple of years, the more and more Lucasfilm has broken canon from the novels and everything on. Like even the Marshal in episode 1 of season 2, he's in the books, but they broke canon on a couple of points about him in the books. And there's differences between the books and what they brought to the show. This is just one of those things where, yeah, Boba Fett's supposed to be younger than Bo-Katan. Whatever. Not in this show. And I'm just okay with it. I know. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, dude, I'm a Star Trek canonista, but when it comes to the age of human beings in the Star Wars universe, I think that depending on what planet you're from, and I think all human beings can age differently. I think the idea and we're all basing it on how we age, our year being 365 days as we orbit a planet. That's how we've organized our lives. But I've never thought, when people are like, wow, Bo-Katan would be this age, I'm like, you know what? First of all, Boba Fett's a clone. And do clones age exactly at the same rate? Who knows? I don't know.
Well, and no, most clones had accelerating growth, but Boba Fett was a pure, unaltered clone, so he was going to grow and develop at regular human speed.
Right, but you said regular
according
human
to the
speed,
movie.
Right, but I'm like, what does that mean? You know, regular human speed based on us, on our world? And that's the thing. I mean, I've never had a problem when people talk about age. I'm just like, okay, people age differently. And to me, when you're dealing with canon, when they don't specifically come out and say something, I'm like, to me, that is something I can believe in. I'm like, okay, people age differently. Human beings age differently throughout the galaxy. I'm done. I'm like, that's an explanation that I can buy into because planets are all different. And if somebody were to say that, I'm like, okay, I believe that.
Oh yeah, I'd be into that too. My only one issue with that is every other human character we've seen in Star Wars, they all say age the same because Padme is from one planet, Anakin was from another planet. Every human they've ever had all ages at the same rate until we get to Bo-Katan and Boba Fett. So,
but that's something that nobody's celebrated a birthday on screen. You know, nobody's actually talked about. People have talked about ages, sort of, but you don't really know.
Look, there's definitely a loophole there. There's definitely a loophole you can use. I'm just saying, look, let's not be surprised that they're not staying consistent with what it was in previous things because Lucasfilm does it a lot more often now than they used to. That's all I'm saying. All right, last one we're going to ask with Rob still here. This one comes to us from Bucky Rocks, who writes, about pirating, Game of Thrones was supposed to be the most pirated show in history while quote-unquote airing, but they also reported getting the most views for HBO and HBO Go with the membership soaring. So do we really think pirating will hurt? Yes. And here's the thing. This is a lame duck excuse that people fall back on sometimes. They take a very rare exception and they try to base their entire argument on it. Both of the things you mentioned are true. Game of Thrones was one of, not anymore, but it was one of the most pirated things ever, especially when the episodes would leak early, But Game of Thrones is also probably one of the most popular shows of all time and got lots of viewers for HBO and all that kind of stuff. Did the piracy hurt? Yeah, it hurt. It absolutely hurt. Just because you make $1 million, if somebody had stolen from you the ability to make an additional 400,000, at the end of the day, you still made $1 million. Yes, great. But were you hurt by that theft? Yes, because you would have had more. In a case, Rob, you and I, just because this is a good common point of reference for all of our viewers and you and I as well, when you go to the case of our friend, John Schnepp, who had his movie tremendously pirated.
Yeah. By our own community.
By his own fan community. And we did. Ask him if it hurt. It hurt a lot. It was the difference between him being able to take the success of The Death of Superman Lives What Happened and turn around and immediately finance a new project he could have done, to not being able to do that. To, struggle to pay off, cover all the payoffs he had to make for making that first film and all that kind of stuff. It absolutely hurts. Now, you will once in a while get at something like Game of Thrones where it's like, okay, it had high piracy, but it also still did really well. And then people try to use that as some sort of justification. We'll say, well, then see, piracy doesn't hurt anything. Yeah, it did. We're just talking about one example where it was still able to succeed, but you're ignoring the 95% of the ones where things can't succeed or what have you, or hurts it a lot more recognizably. So, this whole thing about, well, it still made money, so therefore it didn't hurt. No, it still did hurt because the success would have been even better. But again, it's that whole fallacy, Rob, that we as human beings often do. We find a very rare, unique situation, and then we try to base our overall argument based on a rarity and an exception to the rule. But I don't know. What's your take on that?
Well, look, I mean, piracy has really, really devastated the ability for low-budget filmmakers and low-budget creators to get their projects financed. It's happened certainly in the horror community for low-budget horror films. And piracy, like you pointed out with John Schnepp, it wasn't just – look, this attitude now that everything – that music and movies which it's not an insubstantial cost to make music. And certainly it's even more expensive to make movies, depending on who you are. You have to pay back the people. John Schnepp had investors. He had people that gave him not insubstantial amounts of money to make The Death of Superman Lives What Happened. And the online sales and the sales of his Blu-ray are what allowed him to pay back those investors. And when he sees numbers, I mean, I remember him telling me that there were millions of downloads of that movie, free downloads, that because he could find out what was being downloaded on Pirate Bay or whatever. And I had, as you did, many, many conversations about how depressed he was, because it's not like some rando who's downloading this film. It's people that knew of him and knew of the movie. And he would hope that they would support him as a creator, because they knew that the money that he was going to make on this was going to be going into something else. And remember, he was deep into production of a series version of The Death of Superman What Happens, where I helped him, and Holly was producing it with them. And they were doing a show. They were about movies that were never made. And there was some fascinating stuff that he was doing, and it kind of fell into limbo. And it's sad. So every time somebody downloads something for free, remember, there's a creator that you like, that you are actually curtailing the ability of that creator to make something else you might like.
All right. Hey, listen, Rob, we've kept you over time again. Thanks a lot for being here, man. But in the meantime, where can people follow you and your adventures online?
You can follow me, of course, on Twitter at BurnettRM. Follow me on Instagram at Robert Meyer Burnett, and find me on my own YouTube channel, The Burnett Work, where we still have the first annual Intergalactic Imagination Connoisseur Film Festival going on. So come watch one of those creators' movies and say like and leave a comment.
All right, dude. Thanks a lot for being here, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow. Have a good one, man.
All right. I'll see.
All right, guys, that is the one and the only, the great Mr. Robert Meyer Burnett, and he'll be back again tomorrow. But for now, we still got some time. Let's keep going through your questions here. Next one up, we've got from Bucky Rocks. Continue. My last comment was talking about Wonder Woman 2 and streaming on HBO. And can we also give a shout out to Ming-Na Wen and looking damn fine at 57? Also, wouldn't the Mando rescue be moot if Luke was going to show anyway? Also, get Anne on the show. She rocks. Well, Anne, of course, has a job. So Anne is working while I'm working. Anne works from home right now. She's in her office doing all big, important Amazon stuff that she does. And I'm in here talking to you guys. And so unfortunately, Anne is not available to be on the show with me, except for when we do our special little, she will be doing our spoiler discussion videos though of Wanda Vision. She and I both did the Mandalorian one. So she'll do the Wanda Vision one with me. And Ming-Na, I mean, come on. That woman is not only a terrific actress, but and listen, I've seen Ming-Na a lot of times because I usually ended up sitting really close to her whenever we went to like Disney premieres or whatever. For some reason, I was always very blessed to be sitting relatively close to her, and I'd see her in the foyer and everything. Listen, you think she's attractive on screen? Like in person, you're shaking your head. Like she's so attractive and so deadly talented. She's awesome. All right, next up, the Wakandan Forever writes, Wonder Woman, all the world is waiting on you in your satin tights, fighting for your rights, and the old red, white, and blue. All our hopes are pinned on you. This is, of course, the old original theme song. And the magic that you do change their minds and change the world. You're a Wonder Woman. Yeah, it's too bad. It's too bad it turned out the way that it did. And again, listen, I got to emphasize this again. I did not hate Wonder Woman 84. I know we live in a 10 or 0 society where everybody is quick to jump. If it's slightly good, it's a 10, it's perfect. Or if it's slightly not good, it's a 0, it's a 0. I'm not one of those guys. I didn't completely hate Wonder Woman 84. I do think it had redeeming elements. But I also can't lie to you. I finished watching the film twice through, really disappointed. It just really, really disappointed. But I believe they're going to learn from it, and I believe they're going to make something better next time. They were ambitious. They tried something really interesting but for me, it just didn't work. So we'll see what happens next time. All right, next up, Rich F writes, "Hey, John, AMC paused A-List last year, but the AMC app says all accounts will be reactivated on March 1st. I don't think I'll go until I'm fully vaccinated. Should I quit now and hopefully rejoin after the 6-month waiting period?" That is a good question. You know, it's something we should probably make a main topic tomorrow. So AMC is saying on March 1st, they will reactivate A-List. Of course, people like me who have A-List, which is awesome, one of the greatest things ever for film fans, they've obviously paused everybody's accounts for the last year or so. They're going to reactivate them on March 1st. Now, here's the thing. That is 3 months away. If things are still really bad, and if we don't see things on the uptick and getting better significantly, then a couple of things are going to happen. Number one, a lot of theaters will still not be allowed to be open. Number two, you're going to see, look, the studios like Disney have already said, we have movies planned for March, April, May, but we'll push those off a little bit longer if we have to. If a lot of theaters still have to be closed, and if studios have to push a couple of their movies even more, I feel very confident that what AMC will do is they will cancel that March 1st reactivation. They'll push it back more. So I say for now, don't cancel your AMC A-List just yet. Wait until, at least the beginning of February or mid-February. See where things are mid-February or as we get, because AMC themselves may push off the relaunch date. They may themselves push it off, so it might not be an issue at all. So I'd say for now, just hold on and wait. I know for me, if we get to March 1st and vaccinations are doing nothing, everything's just as bad, we still have massive, massive spikes and everything's terrible and the theaters around me are closed anyway. If that's still the case on March 1st and AMC tries to relaunch their A-List on March 1st, like reactivate my account, then I'm probably going to cancel. But I don't think they'll do that. I think they'll push it off if that's the case. So I would say for now, Rich, just kind of wait and see. All right, next up, Just Jake writes, "Hey, John, been watching you since you were in a closet back in the AMC days, but never felt compelled to participate over the years until now. Just wanted to say I very much enjoyed your movie." Oh, thank you so much, man. I very much enjoyed your movie and wait in anticipation for what you do next. Thank you for everything you do. Bring on the filthy. Thank you so much for that, Jake. I really appreciate that. And thank you for checking out my movie. Movie Trailers, A Love Story, now available everywhere. Thank you so much for that, man. I really appreciate it. And thanks for being around since the AMC closet days. Those were good days, actually. All right, next up, Diego Maguino, hi from Peru, writes, "Hey, John and Co. The other day you said it's unfair that Grace Randolph's being criticized for the Pedro Pascal rumor. It's been proven to be false, but she's doubled down and won't admit she was wrong. Star Wars fandom is divided already. She deserves to be called out." Well, listen, what I was very clear about, and listen, by the way, everybody knows that I have issues with Grace Randolph and whatever. Everybody knows that. That's no secret. But to be fair, Grace does what everybody in this industry does. Now, we all handle it a little bit differently, but basically this. She has contacts and sources. She gets told certain things. Some things she'll believe and some things she won't. And if she believes them, and if she believes she has enough information coming in to substantiate it, she runs with it as a story on her videos. That's what everybody does. Now, some people are a lot more stingy as to what they believe from what they're being told, and some people are a little looser and a little more liberal with what they'll believe when they're told something. At the end of the day, Grace Randolph, who I do not believe for a second made up the whole Pedro Pascal drama on Mandalorian. I don't believe for a second that she made that up. I believe at the end of the day, she got told by a source or maybe a couple that that was the case. She looked at it and she determined that the information she was getting justified reporting it as a story on her channel. Now, look, sometimes, hopefully most of the time, you're correct. And sometimes the information you got given was wrong. And listen, if Grace Randolph, and I don't watch Grace, but if Grace Randolph is quote unquote doubling down, then it's because she really does believe in the information she's being told. Maybe she's right. Maybe she's wrong. But I don't believe in calling out somebody for just basically standing by what they believe to be true. Now, if it looks like somebody's just making crap up, like if it looked like Grace Randolph was just making shit up and just throwing whatever out there, well, then yes, she would deserve to be called out. But listen, she got a story. She believed her sources. She ran with it as a story. Turns out the story wasn't true, but she still believes it. Okay. I have no qualms with that. I have no qualms with that. And I know everybody loves drama, but listen, I have no issue. I don't know why anybody does have an issue. You can believe the story or you cannot believe the story and then move on. I don't see this whole thing about let's make this a referendum on Grace Randolph. I don't understand the logic behind that. And remember, I say that as somebody who's not a Grace Randolph fan. But I really don't see the need to make an issue out of it or make her a target of something or to make her the story. I don't agree with that. I don't see any purpose for it. So I think people just need to move on for it. If you either believe the story or you don't, great. Now just move on. That's my take on it at any rate. But oh well, who cares what I think? And really ultimately, I will make an exception if I'm trying to defend another YouTube channel. I don't like to spend time on my show talking about other YouTube channels, just to be clear. You paid a tip. I appreciate that. You wanted to ask a question. I appreciate that. But I'll just tell you straight up, I don't think there's a story here. That's just my take on it. Anyway, I appreciate you writing in, Diego, regardless. Thanks for that, man. All right, next up. Suthius writes, hey guys, what has been your favorite character reveal in the MCU? Whether it's Spidey, Black Panther, Wasp, etc. Mine is the first reveal of the MCU, War Machine. I remember seeing that in theaters, thinking to myself, wow, he's actually live action. It all depends on what you mean by reveal. Different people say and mean different things by that. Certainly one of the great ones was in Captain America Civil War. Like we had already met Peter, because Peter and Tony had that meeting at Peter's apartment. But Spider-Man coming into the fight in that airport scene in Civil War, that was certainly one of the great ones. I don't know if I'll say definitively, I don't know if I would say definitively that was the best one. I'd have to think about that. I'm not really sure, but definitely the Spider-Man one swinging in Civil War was a really great introduction. All right, next up, Luke1234 writes, after watching Mandalorian Season 2 finale, I can't help but think that it would have been more impactful if when Mando unmasks for Baby Yoda, that it should have been the first time he did it ever, so that we could see his face for the first time with the child. I don't know, because listen, that's taking away from the power of that finale of Season 1, or it might have been the second last episode, whichever one, when he's with, the droid and he's dying and the droid needs to give him medical attention. And he says, I am no man. I'm not a human. So he takes his mask. That was very powerful. That was a very powerful scene. I wouldn't want to have lost that. In the episode with Bill Burr, when he's realizing I have to break my lifelong oath to take off my mask around other people, if I have to do that, if I want to save the kid. And he's willing to do that. That was powerful. Would I have want them to have lost that scene? No, do not lose that scene. That was great. So listen, if they had not had him take his mask off that one time in Season 1, and if he had not taken off his mask in the episode with Bill Burr, would it have made that scene with Baby Yoda taking off his mask for Baby Yoda, would it have made that scene a little bit more powerful? Yes. But the price tag of that is to lose out on that scene from Season 1 and to lose out on the scene from the Bill Burr episode. Oh, that's too high of a price. Too high of a price. I would not want to lose those moments as well. And it was still very powerful. So anyway, that's kind of my take on that, Luke. All right, next up. The Cinephile writes, you say you won't review older films because of the time and the lack of views those vids would bring you, but does that make sense when your peers, Stuckman and Johns, rack up 100 to 400,000 views reviewing 20-plus-year-old films like Scream, Texas Chainsaw, and Blade? Those are two completely different things. Like, I have done revisit reviews. Like, I used to do those quite a bit on my channel back in the days. I used to do like revisit reviews and things like that of films that came out years ago, right? That's one thing. It's a totally different thing to say Wonder Woman 84 came out and then I don't put out my review till this coming Thursday. That's two very, very, very different things. So like when, if you want to talk about Stuckman, when, let's say Black Widow comes out, Stuckman's not going to put out his review for Black Widow 9 days after it comes out, right? That's a totally different thing than, say, going back and revisiting a movie and re-reviewing a movie from 3 years ago or 30 years ago. Those are two totally different things. So I have done revisit reviews and I may do some more again in the future. But yeah, there's no point in doing a review for a brand new movie when the movie's already come out a week ago and everybody's already kind of seen it and everybody's already seen, 100 reviews of it. Then for me, that's not really a lot of point. But revisit reviews, totally different thing. Totally different thing. All right, next up. Ryan writes, Merry Christmas. However, you got to watch Kingdom. There's another vote for Kingdom. You being a huge MMA fan, I assumed you watched it. It's one of the best shows I've seen, but it is a show for MMA fans. Did you like the movie Warrior with Tom Hardy? I loved it, but Kingdom is a better version. That's high praise. Saying something is better than Warrior? Because that was damn good. That was damn good. Again, Kingdom is this MMA show where it's a drama. It's a scripted drama that I just thought the trailers looked bad for it. And I knew a couple of people who watched it and said they didn't like it. So I've always just skipped it, but I'm getting more and more people writing in saying they think it's really good and maybe I should give it a chance. If I hear from a lot more people saying that, I just might have to do that, Ryan. Thanks for throwing your hat in that. All right, the Cinephile writes, one thing that bugs me as a lover of all types of film is the constant talk in the community about Star Wars and comic book films. I've seen no talk about some of the year's best films, Sound of Metal, The Assistant, Wolf Walkers, Mangrove, etc. Why is this? I think there's a couple of big things here. Number one, first of all, I have mentioned a couple of those. I'm just saying, there are a couple I have talked about during this year. Anyway. It's like when it's Super Bowl time and wondering why when you turn on sports news, everybody's talking about the Super Bowl. Well, because it's the biggest thing in the world right now. And also, for the most part on this show, now that we're going to start getting more movies coming out on a fairly regular basis, there's not a lot of point in a show like mine. A lot of times. I make an exception sometimes. There's not a lot of point in a show about me because my show is really about all of us as a community. All of us gather around the virtual water cooler talking about our favorite things in the world, movies and movie news and all sorts of good stuff, right? For the most part, on this show, we try to talk about the things that we all have a common point of reference for. So like a lot of us watch Mandalorian, so we can talk about Mandalorian, knowing that a good number of us have watched it or have been talking about it. And if we haven't seen it, we've heard other people talking about it. It's a common point of reference. And so we gather around this virtual water cooler together and we talk about it. Or if you're talking about the new James Bond film, whether people love James Bond or not, everybody knows about James Bond. Everybody's got experiences with James Bond in one form or another. Maybe people have seen the new Bond film, maybe they haven't, whatever, but that's a big common point of reference for all of us is the big James Bond film or the new Tom Cruise movie or the new big hit show or whatever. It's difficult to gather around the virtual water cooler and talk and bring up a topic that maybe 90% of the people around the water cooler with you have never heard of or don't currently have an interest in. So it's a fine line. Like I always struggle with that because there are smaller projects I really like to get behind and support. But here's a great example of this. So you guys know that on my YouTube channel, we put up the individual we put up the whole show, but then we also put up the individual segments of all the main topics. Whenever I talk about as a main topic, say one of the smaller films that are out there that maybe it's just small indie, it's got no marketing. A lot of people have never even heard of it, all that kind of stuff. And I put up those segments. Guess what the lowest view segment of that day will be? It'll be that one. That puts me then in an awkward position of, then what is my audience wanting to talk about? Well, for the most part, my audience is wanting to talk about the things that most of us have a common point of reference of. Maybe not something we've all seen, but certainly things we've all heard about, things we're all anticipating, things we're all kind of looking forward to, things we know about or are familiar with their pop cultural influence or whatever, because then it involves all of us in the conversation. I found that when I talk about a lot of things that are outside of that scope, it makes a lot of my audience feel alienated. It's like, oh, I've never even heard of that movie or show. I don't know anything about it. I have never heard anything or whatever. It's not within that realm. So this conversation really doesn't have anything to do with me. And so I'm always wrestling with that about where to strike that balance with I know that was a conversation we used to have a lot back in the AMC days as well. Back in the AMC days of talking about which stories do we cover, which do we not? We created an entire show called AMC Independent to talk specifically about smaller independent shows as well. So I don't know. It's a line. But I would say for the most part, man, you got to blame those films themselves. Sound of Metal, The Assistant, Wolfwalkers, Mangrove, all these things. They were never marketed. Like if you don't market your projects so people know about them, then you can't be surprised when people don't talk about them. Right? So a lot of the responsibility lies there. But anyway, it's a great question to ask. And it's something that I personally, as a showrunner, like I'm always wrestling with that question too, about where do you put that line? So I'm glad that you asked it, Cinephile. All right, next up. Where are we at? Assorted Musings writes, Merry Christmas from Ottawa. I love Ottawa. John, Ann, Rob, and Aaron. It's Christmas Eve, so this was obviously the other day. And just watched Love Actually with the family. 17 years since it came out. 38-year-old man, and brings me to tears every single time. In my opinion, the GOAT of Christmas movies. Thoughts? I really like Love Actually. Love Actually is a movie that is kind of divisive. I know a lot of people, look, I find most people fall into one of two camps. They either really don't like Love Actually or they really do. I like Love Actually. Now, I will admit, when I think of Christmas movies, my mind doesn't go to a film like Love Actually. I admit that, but it is a film I still quite enjoy a lot. Oh, by the way, I just noticed that Sort of Musing tipped in $50. Thank you so much, man, for supporting the channel on that level. And by the way, when you look at Love Actually, let me just bring this up here. The cast is amazing. The cast is really great. Let me just bring it up here. Because you've got like everything from Bill Nighy, who is a god to me. That dude is just like everything. Colin Firth, Liam Neeson, Emma Thompson, Martin Freeman, Chiwetel Ejiofor, Keira Knightley, Hugh Grant. I mean, let's look at the cast. Laura Linney. It just goes on and on. It's this incredibly huge, wonderful cast. To me, I just find it a very charming, wonderful, fun little film. I enjoy it a great deal. So I'm glad you guys were able to enjoy it and take that into Christmas as well. Thanks for sharing that, man. And again, thank you for supporting the channel on that level of Sort of Musings. I really appreciate that, dude. And enjoy it every year. Enjoy it every year. All right, next up. Assorted Musing writes in again, tips $50 again, and writes, my mom and I have a tradition that we got to the movies on Christmas Eve. First time in 32 years we have missed it because COVID-19. Instead, watched Chicago 7 on Netflix and kicked everyone out of the living room. Phenomenal film, Eddie and Sasha. Wow, listen, there's a reason. Like, I'm the guy that I'm very skeptical about Netflix original movies. It's just something that I just generally find to be not that good. Netflix original movies, 90% of the time, are just totally bad. Not very good, not worth talking about, not worth thinking about. They're basically just really awful. My favorite movie of the year, for most of the year, was The Gentleman with Matthew McConaughey. I love that movie. It's a Guy Ritchie film. And I love Guy Ritchie films. So The Gentleman to me was my favorite movie of the year for a long time until I saw Trial of the Chicago 7. That movie, directed by Aaron Sorkin, who's really turning into a very good director. On top of being one of the best writers in the business, he's turning into a very good director at the same time. Trial of the Chicago 7 instantly became my new favorite movie of the year. I mean, it is just... it's thrilling. It's engaging. It's got moments filled with heart. I mean, if you've seen the film, the scene with Michael Keaton, come on, the first scene with Michael Keaton at his house in his office, one of my favorite scenes of the year. One of my absolute favorite scenes of the year. But yeah, this movie to me is absolutely stunning. I love it. It is, as of right now. I still got a few movies to check off before the end of the year. I've seen most of them already, but for me right now, Trial of the Chicago 7 is my favorite movie of the year. It's still way up there. Thanks a lot for saying that in, Assorted. All right, next up. Another one from Assorted, who again tips in $50. Thank you, man, for supporting us on that level, dude. Finally, I just wanted to say thank you for producing high quality content daily. As one Canadian kid to another, I grew up close to you in Toronto. I lived in Toronto for a good period of time. You represent us spectacularly on a daily basis. Cheers for a better 2021. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Thank you so much, man. So for those of you who don't know, my hometown is Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, the Hammer, as we affectionately call it. And Hamilton, Ontario, Canada has a population of between 800,000 to 1 million people. And we're about 45 minutes up the road. You get on the 403 into the 401 and you get into Toronto, which is obviously like Canada's biggest city. But I lived in Toronto for a while too, because I went to seminary in Toronto. And I had friends live in Toronto, so I would drive into Toronto all the time to go visit my friends and things like that. And I love the city. And yeah, it is an awesome privilege to every day get up. You know, me and Rob talk about this on the phone quite often. It's just to get up every day, to know that today, I mean, it's a lot of work, but to know that we get to talk about movies and great streaming and great TV shows with our fellow fans. That's great. I mean, that just makes every day a good day to get out of bed. You know what I mean? And it's a lot of work the night before, and it's a lot of work the morning of. There's a reason I roll out of bed the time of day that I do. But it's always a thrill, and it's great. And I agree. Here's looking forward to a better 2021 with a lot more movies and TV shows and streaming to talk about, and we're looking forward to it. And thanks for being here and being a part of that, Assorted. I really appreciate that, man. All right. Let's keep going here. We got time for just a couple more. Boris writes, I'm Nick Cage. Let's get F. That trailer has me excited. That's, of course, for the Dirty Words thing coming on Netflix. 2021, the return of Nick Cage is near. Merry Christmas to you, your family, and friends. It was 42 degrees Celsius for us. Hope yours was a little bit cooler. Oh, where were you? That it was 42 degrees Celsius. For those of you who are American, you don't understand the Celsius system. I'm guessing that's about 110. Maybe a little bit less. It's about 110. I don't know where you were, where you had that type of heat, because it wasn't here in California. Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this. What is it, 6 episodes? Yeah, so Nick Cage, hold a second here. So Nick Cage, Dirty Words, Netflix. For those of you who weren't around when we talked about it on the show here, because we did talk about this a couple of weeks ago. Nick Cage has a new series coming out on Netflix. I believe it's called The History of Swear Words. It's going to be 6 episodes, each one detailing a very dirty word, all the dirty words you can think of. So each episode of the show is going to focus on one particular dirty word. If you have not seen the trailer for this, you should totally go to YouTube and look up the trailer for History of Swear Words with Nicolas Cage. And each episode not only will cover a different swear word, but will also have different guests on it. He'll have different celebrity guests. And Nick Offerman is going to be like one of the guests on one of the episodes. I said somebody wrote in and said it's a lost opportunity if Samuel L. Jackson is not a guest on the fuck episode. If Samuel L. Jackson's not in that is a missed opportunity. And you're probably right. That probably is a missed opportunity. But I don't think Samuel L. Jackson's going to be one of the guests. He wasn't listed as one of the guests at any rate. So I am looking forward to that a lot, and I cannot wait to watch it, Boris. All right, next up, this will be the final one of the day, guys. This one comes to us from James LH, who writes, Hi, John. In Mandalorian, where Luke's beard... in Mandalorian, where's Luke's beard he has later on? Obviously joking. But if you think of time between Jedi and Mando, they could have gone by the bearded Hamill in the classic Slipstream. There you go. When was the last time you had to think of that film? It's been a while. But honestly, one of the things that I did think about was they made Luke look very much like he did at the end of Return of the Jedi. Now that's fine. And I understand why they did it, because they wanted us to have that big nostalgia rush. And rightfully so. But I remember thinking, would he actually still look exactly like that 4 years, maybe closer to 5 years after the end of Return of the Jedi? Would he still look just like that 5 years later? Probably not. He probably would have looked a little bit different. But you know what? They wanted to give us that moment. That when he grabs the hood and pulls it off, and it's the Luke we remember. It's specifically the Luke we remember from that last scene of Return of the Jedi as he overlooks the pyre of Darth Vader. Like, that's the Luke, that's the face they wanted us to see. And I totally get it. And I totally agree with it. So that was good. That was good. But yes, they could have very justifiably had him look a little bit different. All right, guys, listen. There are still more questions to go from James LH, a lot from James LH, a Brazilian Dude, ZOMG Ruler, and a bunch of others. Like I said, we haven't done a John Campea show since last Wednesday, so we do have a lot backpiled. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a companion video a little bit later today. I've got 2 companion videos to do today. One, to finish off the Wonder Woman 84 spoiler discussion ones. We've got that one coming up today. And I will do another companion video to get us as caught up on all these questions you guys have sent in as possible. So if you did send in a question in the last few days, keep your guys' eyes open for those videos. Your question may appear in that, and then we will pick up again with them on tomorrow's John Campea show. All right, guys. That will do it for today's installment of the John Campea Show. Thank you guys so much for being here and being a part of the show today. We know there's a lot of things you can be doing with your time. The fact that you spent a couple of hours with us here today is truly, truly an honor. Thank you so much for doing that. Thanks to Robert Meyer Burnett. A special thank you to all of you guys who sent in these live tip questions. Number 1, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number 2, because you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us here at the John Campea Show, thank you guys very, very much for your support. All right, guys, don't forget, do the 4 main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until tomorrow, my friends, bye-bye.